I don't think Barcelona fans realize the incredible feat that we achieved against Real Madrid this season to be able to not only beat them but actually destroy them 4 times this season. And I'm going to kind of focus on what Xabi Alonso need to improve to make El Clasico a little bit better next season and not allow Barcelona to destroy them. If he could actually improve this Real Madrid is another question. And at the end of this video, I'm going to expose Real Madrid's biggest flaw this season. Subscribe as always, but let's get into the video. One of the biggest flaws Real Madrid had this season was the lack of build-up play they did, because they don't really have these ball-playing center-backs. So when the pressure comes in from Barcelona, they couldn't really cope with it because they don't have ball-playing center-backs. If you partner that with the fact they don't really have technical midfielders, the pressure was way too immense for Real Madrid and they couldn't cope with it. So now we can appreciate the quality of Toni Kroos, because Real Madrid don't have control over matches, and not even only Barcelona, smaller teams too. But what did Ancelotti do? So Ancelotti tried a bunch of different stuff, but let's look at the most recent El Clasico, where in the build-up phase, when Barcelona pressed high, they would go long, but it was actually Fede Valverde that would go and do that goal kick. While Fede Valverde was doing this, you would see Vinicius and Mbappe go extremely high behind Barcelona's backline to force the backline to also go backward. So because Fede Valverde had the range, he would kick the ball straight into the likes of Vinicius and Kylian Mbappe. So they wanted to bypass Barcelona's press and make them isolated, and then the guys would later on join the rest of the attack. In this frame right here, we can clearly see it's Fede Valverde that would kick the goal kick because of range probably, and the rest of the players would actually go up high in order to isolate Barcelona's press. And you can see Mbappe was almost in the box of FC Barcelona. So these 4 players at the back, they couldn't really join the press and play a high line because you cannot be offside from a goal kick. However, Flick didn't even have to do anything to counter this, because the tactic in itself has a major flaw, or at least 2 major flaws. And what exactly was that? The flaw was that Vini Jr. and Mbappe are not good in the air and they are not great target men. So for the most part, Barcelona would win the ball and play the ball into the likes of Pedri and Frenkie de Jong. Partner that with the fact that Valverde was tactically or practically inside the back line, the open spaces was just devastating for Real Madrid, and Barcelona could instantly just play the ball back and make Real Madrid do these lung-busting runs. I'm going to say this again, Carlo Ancelotti is out here in 2025 wasting the talent of Federico Valverde, because this was not a good tactic. Because look at how many players Real Madrid has in the half of Barcelona. And unfortunately, we didn't really take advantage of this, because then we would have scored easy 8-9 goals in this match. So there's the first major flaw that Xabi Alonso has to improve, the build-up play, if he wants to stand any chance against Barca or any major team. And let's go through it step by step. I think it's no secret that Xabi Alonso loves to have a possession-based style, with averaging almost 60 passes per match in a season where they are assumingly struggling. The goalkeeper is super important. I think the biggest flaw here would be Thibaut Courtois, because the goalkeepers are expected to be able to handle the pressure when the teams come up high and they actually press them, where they're actually encouraged to come out with the ball as well. Not only that, when the ball circulation is going around and Xabi Alonso's team seemingly is not getting the ball forward, the ball often gets played back towards the goalkeeper, and this goalkeeper needs to be able to handle the pressure. So I don't think it's a good thing to have Courtois for a manager like this, and I think this is going to be a major flaw, might even have to replace him. Both goalkeepers for Bayer Leverkusen this season has an extremely high passes per game ratio. And remember, La Liga, the teams are pressing much more higher. Because look at the game against Bayern. Even with pressure, this goalkeeper is expected to play the ball relatively easy into his fullbacks, or even kick it long in those instances where he has to, right? And the goalkeeper is an option always, even with a high press. And I'm sorry, I do not see Thibaut Courtois being able to do this. He was not even trusted to kick the ball long. Like I said, you can see here again, even with pressure, this keeper is expected to always be in control and help the build-up play. One of the biggest major flaws they also had is that imbalance in that midfield, with them not having the ability to control games, because you would expect Madrid to be a possession-based style team, right? And also to take the ball off of the opposition midfield, and they have really struggled. And I don't really think they have the technical ability to be able to control games. Real Madrid mostly defended in a 4-4-2 against Barca and all major teams with a front two. In this case, it's Endrick and then also four midfielders. And this just boggles my mind as to why Ancelotti would do something like this. The reason I'm saying this is that the 4-4-2 naturally has a numerical disadvantage against a three-man midfield like Barcelona, for example, but also the defensive responsibility that's now put onto their wider players, which normally is their talented midfielders. They have to hold their positions and stay narrow, especially somebody like Jude Bellingham, who has been tucked onto the wings in order to help defend and help the fullbacks in order to defend. And this is a problem, and this has hindered their transitional play immensely, because in the situations where Real Madrid would do turnovers, you would have the likes of Jude and other Goulet be isolated from the front three, and Barcelona, being so good at gegenpressing, would put them under pressure even more. So a change in defense, not only personnel-wise but also their structure, is an absolute certainty if you partner that with their biggest flaw. But before we get to that, let's look at something else wrong in midfield. Madrid centre-backs almost never pick out the easy option, for example, right to the fullback. They like to play the ball in behind, and I do think that's because they are not really comfortable on the ball. But mostly turnovers happen because they are not really great on the ball. Another thing that's wrong is also the fact that Jude is extremely attacking, and then when Denis Ceballos and Valverde drop deep, there's a great space between the guys at the back and the front line, and these players like Valverde are not really excellent on the ball. I mean, let's be honest, and they cannot really find these players in between the lines. Therefore, they have to rely on Mbappe and Vinicius in these one-on-one situations. So many a times the midfield gets bypassed completely. Like against Sociedad, you can see here David Alaba on the ball as a center back, right? Now, the easier option would be the outlet here towards the fullback, but I don't think they're wired like that to circulate and pass the ball around. Instead, he goes long in order to get the likes of Vinicius and Mbappe in behind, or even maybe somebody like Endrick. And look at where their base player, which is Aurelien Too Much Money, or let me rephrase, too many, because some Barca fans get angry at me when I mispronounce these guys' names. Over here we see Valverde dropping onto the ball, but look at the gap between the midfield players and the front line. So that is way too big. So that's another structure he has to change. However, the biggest flaw of Madrid has to be the fact that Mbappe and Vinicius does not have defensive discipline. So that must be the biggest flaw they have. Because who can forget this iconic moment and iconic video where Luis Enrique is actually preaching to Mbappe that he needs to defend? And has he been defending? Let me know down in the comment section. Having Mbappe and Vinicius defensively, you might as well defend with 8 players, because they are always outnumbered numerically against Barcelona this season. Like, they have no defensive impact whatsoever. We saw in the last El Clasico that Kobarchi was easily passing the ball into the likes of Pedri and Frenkie de Jong, and they didn't even run back to put some pressure. They would just be on their heels, even at the times when they were tasked to maybe like cut out the passing lane, you know, like circulate with Pedri and Frenkie, whatever they would do. Pedri could easily drop into these areas and get onto the ball, and there would be no pressure from Kylian Mbappe or Vinicius Jr. at all. So building up and circulating the ball for Barcelona and bigger teams has been relatively easy. Even Real Sociedad had an easy time building up against Vinicius and Kylian Mbappe. Look at this frame right here. Look at where's Mbappe and where's Vinicius. Oh, let me say Vinicius, because Barcelona fans get angry when I mispronounce these guys' names, right? Look at Mbappe. In this case, it's Frenkie de Jong that receives the ball, but he's literally standing on his 2 feet. There's no sense of urgency with him to go out and press. Look at Frenkie. Frenkie still has the ball. Frenkie could have the ball like for 5 seconds there, and no pressure from Kylian Mbappe at all. Vinicius is not even in the picture right now. So that's just crazy. Vinicius Jr., I mean, he's just terrible at defending. Just terrible. He can only run with the ball. So these two are the biggest flaw Real Madrid has, and something that Xabi Alonso would have to sort out. And I do not think he's going to get them to defend, or at least one of them has to leave in order for Real Madrid to be successful. And people think of me like I'm crazy if I say this, but having 2 players like these that don't defend is like playing with 8 players. How are you ever going to put pressure on Barcelona if you have these 2 guys both in your team at the same time and they both don't defend? As always, do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow. Goodbye.